All right, everybody. Happy Monday. Welcome back. This is the Horn Takes podcast. This is your very rough around the edges Texas sports talk destination. I'm your host, Sean Redfern. Getting a little bit closer. We got 2 weeks, folks. 14 days to the college football playoff semifinals. We're getting excited about that. We had a few bowl games over the weekend. I hardly want to call them bowl games, but they were bowl games. And so we did a Trace Otra game for the Independence Bowl. So we'll recap that. We'll go around the horn. It's that time of year where there's all kinds of Texas sports stuff happening. So we'll kind of go around the horn, talk about those things. And then we'll have the quick and dirty as we head into this matchup with the Washington Huskies. Check us out on Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday at 12 noon Central Time. You can find us on Twitter, TikTok, and YouTube at Horn Takes. If you just like to listen to podcasts, we do that too. You can find us at horntakespodcast.buzzsprout.com or anywhere you get your podcasts. Trace Otra Games, Independence Bowl edition. This one was a matchup between Texas Tech and Cal. Rematch of the game back in 2004? Where Cal doesn't get into a BCS game. They complain about it incessantly. Aaron Rodgers whines about it ad nauseum. And then they go on and get their asses handed to them by Texas Tech. So we were really hoping that Tech would win this game as well. And we thought Tech would do it if they had Taj Brooks. We weren't sure. It's hard to know who's playing, who's not playing anymore in these bowl games. And it's literally impossible for me to keep up with all these different teams. So I wasn't sure. I knew they had some wide receivers that I thought were going to be out. But we thought they got Taj Brooks. They're going to pound the rock. Maybe hit some shots over the top. Tech playing at home almost, man. Shreveport is almost a home game for Tech. Just kidding, it's not. It's a long-ass way. But it's a lot closer than Cal. We thought Tech would get this one done 38-27. They get it done 34-14. Sorry, Aaron Rodgers. You got to piss and moan again. I think the Jets got their asses handed to them this weekend too. So it was a really good weekend for Aaron Rodgers. Couldn't have happened to a better person. We're now 29-15 on the season during these Trace Otra games. And now we just have to wait, man, because there's not a single interesting bowl game until the 27th. So you're not going to hear Trace Otra games out of my mouth. What is it, the 19th, the 18th for a long time, sometime next week. Around the horn, men's basketball. So we finally got to watch an entire University of Texas Longhorn men's basketball game on Saturday. Cutting the cord, folks. You got to pick the right place to land or you don't get Longhorn Network, which at the time when I cut the cord, I was thinking this isn't going to be a big deal because Texas is going to the SEC next year in football. So I don't have to worry about it, right? Well, I totally forgot about men's basketball. Totally forgot about baseball. That's the one that's going to hurt me the most. So I have to figure out a way to keep up with all these baseball because baseball has a ton of games on Longhorn Network. Matter of fact, all of them until you start getting into the tournament. All of those games are on Longhorn Network. So, yeah. I'm not sure. I went to Hulu. I dropped DirecTV and went to Hulu. Really like Hulu. I don't know. I might have to get a sub to something. You know what's ridiculous is I pay for ESPN Plus, and Longhorn Network is part of ESPN, but it's not covered under ESPN Plus. Complete and total, utter bullshit. I don't even know. I'm trying hard to understand the business decision there. Like you're limiting access to a channel that you're already paying for. The production cost is already there. How is that a better plan than just allowing the people that pay you a subscription to get it? It's got to have something to do with like their deals with these major cable and satellite carriers or something. I hate it. Anyway, Texas Longhorns men's basketball takes down LSU Saturday, 96-85. They move on to 8-2 on the season. Texas dropped 56 points in the first half of this game, which was phenomenal. They were 20 of 30 from field goals, on field goals. 6 of 9 from beyond the arc. So, man, they were just on fire, man. There was nothing they couldn't do. They were playing decent defense. I think the halftime score was 56-37. So they're playing decent defense, not great defense. And they follow up that first half with a 40 spot in the second half. It took them 12 minutes of the second half to score 16 points. That's clearly not good. 60% shooting and 66% on threes turned into 46% from the field and 36% from behind the three-point line. So they obviously went cold, but they were so super hot. I mean, I don't know what's a good shooting percentage. I feel like anywhere around 50 is probably pretty good in basketball. And I think in the 30s is probably pretty good from three. So their second half numbers, not bad, just not near as good. And what that tells me is they just didn't play any defense at all, man. Guards led the way in scoring. Transfer Max Abmas had 20. Tyrese Hunter had 19. Dylan Mitchell, 12 points. We haven't seen him play a lot. We saw him play against Louisville, like the end of the Louisville game. And then they played, I still can't remember who they played and got blown out by. Top 10 team. Doesn't matter. I watched a little bit of that one, and then I was just like, man, I think I watched a half of it, and I was like, that's enough of that. It was bad. So all we remember is Dylan Mitchell from last year, who was just could fly, right? I mean, get the ball above the rim, he can go up and get it and throw it down. But he couldn't really create his own shot. Just kind of looked lost on offense, was just running around a lot. Always a good rebounder, always a good shot blocker. But he's been working on his game, folks. He's averaging 11 points per game right now. And I think last season he was right around 4, little over 4 points per game. So Dylan Mitchell becoming a scorer is gonna make this a really dangerous team. Dylan Dessou is back. Dylan Dessou had a really good last few games of last season, starting kind of in the Big 12 tournament, and then on through the NCAA tournament until he got hurt. He was killing people offensively, and it just kind of came out of nowhere. Dylan Dessou transferred from Vanderbilt. We knew he had some sort of, I think he had a knee reconstruction at Vanderbilt. And so it took him a while just to even get into kind of even in basketball shape. And he was a good rebounder. He's a really tall guy, really long guy. I mean, he rebounded, blocked, all those things you would expect a really long, tall guy to do. But again, the scoring just wasn't there. And then all of a sudden at the end of last season, man, he just turned it on and was killing people. Well, he comes back in this game after being out since the NCAA tournament and drops 17 on LSU. Obviously a big piece of this Texas offense. I think now that you got the two guards, you got Max Abmas, Tyrese Hunter, Dylan Mitchell, Dylan Dessou. You got that big transfer. I cannot remember his name. Give me some grace, folks. I've only seen him play once. I did not have the sound on either. I was watching Texas high school football playoff games. So what I'm getting at, this team looks pretty talented. It'll be interesting to see now that Dylan Dessou is back, how they can do. It would have been interesting to see him in those 2 losses that they've had already this season to pretty good teams. We said it on the show, I believe Thursday or Friday, because we had heard Dylan Dessou was coming back or about to be coming. He was getting close to being ready. We thought this team's going to look a whole lot different with him than it does without him. And I think even though this team is 8-2, they haven't looked good at times. But I think you get further into the Big 12 schedule and let those guys get their legs up under them, get used to playing again. I think this team has a chance to be a pretty good team. I think they need to be better defensively. One of the most immediate things you noticed last year when Chris Beard was out and Rodney Terry was in was a couple things. The defense, not as good. The offense, however, a little bit more lively, a little bit more explosive. So I think Rodney Terry likes to run. So you see this team try to turn the ball over and run a lot. But they just don't play good half-court defense yet. And I don't know. I mean, it's almost kind of like the argument with Texas Tech back in the day when they used to score like 40-something points a game, but they couldn't stop a soul. You know, is the defense really that bad? Or is it just a product of the fact that teams get so many more possessions against them because their offense just scores it, you know, in chunks? They either score really quick or give the ball up really quick. So their defense is on the field all the time. So I wonder if there's not a little bit of that going on with this Texas team, at least a little bit. Now, obviously, they got to be better. I mean, I don't think you're going to win too many games. Definitely not winning any championships, giving up 85 points a game. And I know LSU is a good offensive team, so I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how they end up. We'll give them a few weeks to get some Big 12 games underneath them. The Big 12, folks, is another in this year, another year of really, really good teams when it's a deep conference. Texas has Texas A&M, Corpus Christi, UNC Greensboro, and UTA all on the Longhorn Network coming up. And then they start Big 12 play against Texas Tech at home January 6th. I don't even know where Texas was picked to fall in the Big 12 this year. Football recruiting, we talked about it last week on the show that this last weekend was going to be a really, really big recruiting weekend for Texas. They had 3 high school guys, and they may have had more. I know they had some commits from the 2024 class on campus, but there were 3 high school guys that they were trying to flip. And then they had invited and thought 3 portal guys were coming in. So all 3 of the high school guys made it on campus. Xavier Filsame is the Florida commit at safety, 5-star guy. I want to know more about his story. Texas didn't get in on him until really maybe like towards the end of the summer. Midsummer, towards the end of summer. I wonder if he's like one of the guys that just really developed between his junior and senior year. But he's been a Florida commit for a long time, and Texas has been working on him. Got him on campus. Lots of crystal balls in favor of Texas for Xavier Filsame. So we'll see how that one goes. Supposedly making the decision. Actually, I read where he may announce today or tomorrow, or it could be Wednesday. And I know that's not very scientific, but that's what I've read. There's no telling. Like, it's kind of going to be a, hey, we're doing it, and they do it. For sure, he's supposed to sign during the early signing period. Anthony Smith, linebacker, A&M commit. He was on campus. Texas has been working on him for a while now. Again, more crystal balls in his favor for Texas, or for Texas's favor for him. He's waiting until Wednesday. And then Alex Foster, this 3-star edge guy that's committed to Baylor. He's out of Greenville, Mississippi. After the visit, he says Texas's chances are high. He, however, is going to stretch out his decision date till the late signing period in February, the old national signing day that almost nobody on the planet waits for anymore. But he's going to do that. I assume that means he really enjoyed his visit to Texas and he's got some things to think about and things to talk about with his family. Totally makes sense. So they got those 3 guys in that they're looking to flip. And it looks pretty solid on all 3 of them. I mean, a recruit saying your chances are really high. I mean, I know these are kids and they change their minds all the time, but that sounds pretty good. So, yeah, 2 days away from National Signing Day, and it's looking really good for Texas to add to that already top 10 class. I believe they're ranked number 6 right now. This little last bit of flipmas season could go a long way to making. I think they're going to bust into the top 5, and I think there's an opportunity for them to be as high as 3, like reasonably. As far as the portal guys, all 3 of them did not make it in. Tyler Boren, Tennessee edge, was supposed to visit, didn't make the trip, and he committed to Ole Miss over the weekend. Ole Miss is like absolutely murdering it in the portal right now. They have the number 1 and number 2 edge out of the portal. They have the number 1 linebacker out of the portal. They got a couple of defensive backs out of the portal. They do have some offensive guys out of the portal, but you can tell that Lane Kiffin has really made it a point to say, man, we can score a lot, but we can't stop anybody. I need to get some defensive players in here. I think the problem for Ole Miss is Lane Kiffin's still the coach. And that dude, man, he's a good offensive guy, I guess. I just don't know. I just don't know that a guy like that ever gets it, man. And I'll admit, like, I've got some bias towards Lane Kiffin. He's like one of those douchebag guys that you just hate. Like, just the way he handles himself and handles business. He's starving for attention constantly. So Tyler Bourne doesn't make it in. Andrew Mukaba and Matthew Golden do make it in. And by all accounts, Mukaba is still expected to commit to Texas. I think he is announcing the transfer portal guys do not have to sign on a certain day. I'm sure there's rules around it. I'm not exactly sure what they are. But there's not like a signing day for transfer portal people. So I had heard that he's expected to sign and announce his commitment like later this week, Thursday maybe. And then Matthew Golden, the wide receiver from Houston, did commit to Texas late Saturday night. So they're 1 for 3 on who they thought were coming. Probably going to be 2 for 3 on their big-time targets out of the portal. It's a pretty good little recruiting weekend for Texas. I really would have liked to seen Dominic McKinley make a trip. It just doesn't look like it's in the stars. I would have liked to have seen Walter Nolan make a trip. Just doesn't seem like it's in the stars, and I don't quite understand why. I know Walter Nolan's a guy out of Tennessee, but he did come to Texas to play college football. Dominic McKinley, I don't know. I don't know why he would stick with Texas A&M, but it looks like that's what he's going to do. Really strange. I mean, I guess if you're a defensive lineman, you would go, okay, well, Texas A&M's had some really good defensive linemen the last couple of years, which is true. But their defensive line coach is gone. He's at Syracuse now. So I really don't know. I really don't understand what the draw is right now. And I guess, these guys commit, and they don't necessarily commit to coaches. maybe he just loves Texas A&M. I don't know. It's really odd. Seems like it's a situation where you might be looking at a transfer really, really soon. I don't know. Like the Tower, folks, the Lady Longhorns dominate the Final Four to bring home the tail end of back-to-back volleyball national championship games. And when I say they dominated, and again, I've admitted this fully, I don't know a ton about volleyball. I know like when you get a point, the serve goes over to you. If you continue to get points out of the serve, you continue to serve. Maybe there's a cutoff for that. I'm not 100% sure. I know you got to hit it inside the box. I know players have to rotate around the court. I think there's a girl on each. I know there's a girl on each team that's generally wearing an off-colored jersey. I think that girl can move around the court wherever she wants, kind of. Like there's zones on the court. There's the front zone, and then there's the back zones. I don't know what the rules are regarding that, but I think if you play on the back, you got to stay on the back. Like you cannot hit the ball across the line to get into the net zone or whatever the hell they call it, and vice versa. I know you got to play to 25 to win. I know you had to win by 2. But I don't know what constitutes an ass whipping in volleyball like I do what constitutes an ass whipping in football. But I feel like this Final Four, these matches in the Final Four were probably pretty good indicators of ass whippings. Texas beats Wisconsin on Thursday, 3-1, and Wisconsin's the number 1 seed. Remember, folks, Texas had to beat number 1 seed Stanford just to make it to the Final Four. And then they face off with Wisconsin in the first round in the semis. And they blast their ass 3-1. So then they go into the final with the overall number 1 seed, Nebraska Cornhuskers. Only lost 1 match all season to that Wisconsin team. And so for me, headed into it, I'm thinking, man, they got a chance. Wisconsin was that team that beat Nebraska. So I'm thinking, they got a chance. The final 2 sets of the Wisconsin match were 25-13 Texas, 25-16 Texas. And by the way, Texas sweeps Nebraska 3-0. And those final 2 sets against Nebraska were 25-14 and 25-11. So the final 2 sets of both of those matches, I'm pretty sure, I wouldn't swear to it because, again, I don't know, but the closest any of those was 9 points. So I'm pretty sure that was a country ass kicking that the Texas ladies gave the rest of the Final Four over the last few days there in Tampa. So congratulations to all those ladies. The players that popped to me in this match, Maddie Skinner, I think she's always going to do that. 16 kills. She had 2 serving aces. The cool thing about her is she can score from the back. So you get her on the back line and they'll set her up about, and I don't know, again, I don't know what these zones are called, but they'll set her about right at the edge of the front and the back zone, and she can jump up and smack that shit wherever she wants it to go just about from way back there. So man, these ladies are hitting this thing hard. My recommendation to ESPN and ABC next year is to get some speedometers up in there, get some radar guns up in there so we can see how hard these ladies are hitting this ball. AJ O'Neal had 5 serving aces. I think they went on like an 11-point run or some crazy nonsense when she was serving in set 2 of that match against Nebraska. I mean, it's just like over and over and over again they're scoring. And then Jenna Winnis had 9 kills. So, again, congrats to those Lady Longhorns. Back-to-back, you can't beat that. Saw some dumbass reporter ask the Nebraska coach about Texas. and he kind of made it sound like Nebraska was second-class citizens. I can't remember the exact phrasing of the question, but it was sort of along the lines of, how did Texas get to the point where they're at right now with back-to-back champions, and how far are you guys away from being that? So it's kind of like, I get the question, I guess. The unfortunate thing about sports is the losing coach is always going to get asked these questions that are kind of borderline, like, what's the word? Antagonizing. And so you're already upset. You're already upset you didn't win. And really, you didn't even show up almost. Just, again, really, really bad loss. And so you already don't feel good about yourself. And then somebody's kind of poking you a little bit, saying, basically saying Texas is just a better program than yours. How are you going to fix it? And so he goes off and, starts talking about how Texas built their team in the transfer portal, and they got all these seniors and, all this crap, which is, is true. But I don't understand why. I do not understand why fans or coaches or anybody sees the transfer portal as a negative thing anymore. Like, I don't understand why you would say, oh, you just built that team in the transfer portal. Well, the transfer portal exists. It's not cheating. It's not cheating to get players out of the transfer portal. So I don't understand why that's seen as a negative thing. But this coach clearly did not like that Texas was able to build what they've built through the transfer portal. And then he went on to say, I like the way we're doing it. We're building this thing from the ground up, which I think is true. And I think there's merit to that too. I think what coaches have got to understand in all sports now, because of the transfer portal, is you have to have both. You have to have a good base of high school players that come in and are willing to stay long enough to get developed. And then every year when the transfer portal does open up, you have that opportunity to just pick and choose a few guys that you think can come in and help you. A few guys or gals that you think can help you for the next season. You got to be willing to go out and do that. I think what you can't do is win with just high school talent or just with transfer portal talent. Again, I think there's got to be a mix. We saw Deion Sanders, for example, go out, gut the shit out of the Colorado Buffaloes roster, like pretty much the second he arrived in Colorado. And then he brought all these kids in through the transfer portal. Well, guess what he's doing again this season? He's having to gut that roster and bring in a whole bunch of guys through the transfer portal. There's like 10 commits from high school players in their entire class. And I think what you're going to see is they're not going to be good again. Because you just don't have enough time between, January when classes start and those guys start lifting and they start doing, unorganized workouts where they're not being coached. There's just not enough time between that time in January and when you step foot on the field in August to build a team of 85 plus people. But then you look at a guy like Dabo Swinney, who's kind of fallen behind. At one point, Dabo Swinney was one of the elite head coaches in college football. But he kind of refuses to play the transfer portal game, refuses to play the NIL game, and maybe not the latter as much. But certainly the portal thing, and you're seeing what's happening to his teams. He has fallen behind. So I think you got to have both. I think it was a crummy question by the reporter. I think it was a ridiculous answer on the surface by the coach. But unlike a lot of Texas fans, I've seen a whole lot of traffic on Twitter today really upset about the comments. I don't really care because I don't see the portal as a negative thing anymore. I don't see NIL as it is no longer a diss to say, oh, you bought your team, because everybody has an opportunity to buy their team. It's not a diss to say, oh, you just bought some players. You just brought some players in out of the transfer portal. Well, everybody has the opportunity to do that. I think everybody just needs to lighten up, like just in general. I don't know. Maybe I just don't listen well enough or pick up on subtle hints, or I don't know. I saw a lot of people on Twitter just really upset that the announcer seemed to be favoring Nebraska in the game yesterday, in that match yesterday. And I still don't know. I still can't think of a thing that was said that would make, even after I've read all these comments on Twitter, that the announcers were clearly favoring Nebraska and they just wanted Nebraska to win so bad. I can't think back at anything that was said and go, yep, I agree with that. I just don't care. Maybe that's the problem, is I just don't care. You see it all the time, even in football games. Man, these guys they just do not want Texas to win, man. And I don't ever hear it. I don't ever notice it. Maybe the problem's me, but I don't think so, because I'm pretty awesome. I think the rest of you people just need to lighten up. The only time I watched a game where I felt like an announcer was like openly discouraged, openly like upset with what was happening during the game, was when Keith Jackson called the 2005 national championship game. He was almost just miserable at the end of that game. And he's a big California homer. That's the only time. Yeah, so everybody just lighten up. You don't have to get offended by everything people say. Like, please, for the love of God, stop being offended by everything people say. The quick and dirty on those Washington Huskies. This is a rematch of the 2022 Alamo Bowl. Washington won that game last season at the end of the year, 27-20. The number 2 Huskies are coming in 13-0 and winners of their last 20 games. So they haven't lost a game going back to a couple losses they had right in a row against UCLA and Arizona State in September and October of 2022. Texas leads this series 3-2 all time. They kind of look to even up the bowl record in this series. A long time ago, they played 2 games. They were not bowl games. The last 3 times they've met, they've played in bowl games. Washington is 2-1 in those games. So a win in the Sugar Bowl would make it 2-2 for Texas if they can pull it off. Obviously, Washington's led by their Heisman finalist and trigger man, Michael Penix Jr. This guy leads the nation in passing yards, has like 4,200 yards passing, leads the nation in yards per game, almost 325 yards per game through the air. He's tied for 3rd in the nation in passing touchdowns with 33. Passing is what this team does. And Michael Penix Jr. can sling it. You look at the Washington defense, they're not really that good statistically. The only major defensive category where they crack the top 40 is in rushing yards per game. And they have the highest yards per carry of anyone ranked ahead of them. They give up 4.26 yards per carry. A trip to the college football playoff national championship is on the line for both of these teams when they kick at 7:45 p.m. Central Time on January 1st. Texas is currently a 4-point favorite in this game. We will do a lot more breaking down of this game over the next 3, 4, 5 episodes of the show. Check us out again tomorrow where we start that multi-show deep dive of the Sugar Bowl matchup between Texas and the Washington Huskies. We'll throw some other stuff, and there's going to be some recruiting news coming up. There's going to be some transfer portal stuff coming up. Basketball still plays. I won't be able to watch them, but we can talk about how they did. Check out the podcast anywhere you listen to podcasts. You can find us on Twitter, TikTok, and YouTube at Horn Takes. Please follow and subscribe. Won't cost you guys a thing, and we would appreciate the support. You can email me at horntakespodcast@gmail.com with all your questions, comments, concerns, and criticisms. You guys have a good rest of your crappy-ass Monday, because I hate Mondays. Get hooked.